what is ROAS? Even better, what is your break-even ROAS, and why does this even matter for your Etsy store? We are going to be answering all of those questions. If you stay until the end, we're going to take a deeper dive in how this correlates to your Etsy ads when it comes to analyzing your Etsy ads. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's get into this video. Okay, so what is ROAS? ROAS stands for return on ad spend. If you go to an ATM, a magical ATM, and you gave it $1 and for whatever reason it gave you $2 back, right? That technically would be a 2x return on your money. That equates to a 2x return on ad spend, or ROAS, right? So the simple way to calculate this is what did you spend on your ads divided by what did the ads generate you?
Guys, so I'm rewatching this footage real fast, and I realized that I said this backwards actually. I said, what did you spend on your ads divided by what the ad generated you? And it's actually backwards. So this is actually supposed to read what the ads generated you divided by what you spent on your ads. So please ignore that. I'm sorry, I said it backwards. Now let's continue on in this video.
So when you go into your Etsy ads, it's showing you exactly that. It's showing your spend in one column, it's showing your revenue in another column, and it's showing your return on ad spend in another column. This is important, but it's kind of meaningless unless you know another metric that is called your break-even ROAS. So that means just because you give the ATM $1 and it gives you back $2, that doesn't mean that your take-home profit was $1, because $2 minus $1 is $1. We all get that. And why is that? That is because you have other fixed direct expenses correlated with the sale of that item, or in that exchange of giving up $1 to get back $2. So some of those direct expenses include your cost of goods sold, which is the total cost associated with creating your product, including maybe materials, maybe packaging costs, maybe there was a shipping cost associated with shipping those materials to your office so you could make it and then ship it to your customers. We want to include in the total cost of goods sold all of those things. What was the total cost associated with making that item before it shipped to your customer? Other costs associated with a sale that we can easily calculate that are direct expenses is Etsy seller fees, which is a standard 6.5%. And then we also have merchant fees, or what Etsy calls payment processing fees, which in the United States is 3% plus 25 cents per transaction. What we are going to use all these metrics for is to calculate what we call that break-even ROAS, which is how much return back in revenue do I have to see on my ad spend to actually break even on the sale. And that break even is the KPI, or the key performance indicator, if on a listing level your ad is profitable or not. In this example, you can see in that very first row, I have a 3.56 return on ad spend, but I know personally that my break-even ROAS is 2x. So anything that goes below 2x means that that ad on that listing level is not profitable in comparison to what I'm spending. Because once you factor in all my other direct expenses, we're actually losing money. So anything under 2x for me means that I'm losing money, not necessarily on the entire listing level, but on what the ads generated me for that listing. And we're gonna talk more about that here in a second, because that's not the extent to which I analyze my listings when it comes to ads, but we'll talk about that at the end. So back to calculating your own break-even ROAS for you. So I put together this very, very simplistic calculate break-even ROAS calculator in an Excel sheet, and it already has the formulas input in here. So if you're not good at using Google Sheets, you can actually download this. There's a link in my description where I can send you this Google spreadsheet document so you can use this and calculate it for yourself. If you don't want to do this, then you can obviously just use a calculator and calculate it on your phone as well. I have two equations here, one on a store level, which is a collective break-even ROAS based off of all of your products. And then I have a second group here, which is on a product level. So it depends If you have thousands of listings or if you have hundreds of listings, it might not be realistic for you to sit here and try to calculate all of your break-even ROAS on all your products. It might be just easier for you to look at it holistically on a store level and kind of get an idea of what on a store level your break-even ROAS is. Now, if you only have 10 products or something like that, then you might want to look a little bit more deeply on calculating it per product. So if we're doing it on a holistic view for the entire store, the metrics that we're gonna need is what is your average sale price. So what does that mean? You're gonna need your total sale prices divided by the total items that you have for sale. So if you have, an easy calculation for this is if you have 10 products listed for sale and they all have a $100 sale price, 10 times 100 is 1,000 divided by 10. That is gonna give you the average sale price. That's what needs to go here, right? And then we need to then do the same equation for the cost of goods sold. So again, your cost of goods sold is what is the total cost associated with making, packaging, finishing off your good before it ships to your customer. We're gonna do the same calculation is if you have 10 products, we're gonna add up all of those costs and then we're gonna divide it by the total amount of products listed for sale. And that's gonna give you your average cost of goods sold. Then we're gonna have our average seller fee, which is going to be 6.5%. So it's gonna be the product of your average sale price times 6.5%. That's why I have that there. And then we have our average payment processing fee, which is, again, it's the product of your average sale price times that 3% plus 25 cents per transaction. So that's gonna give us that. Now, because we have all of those metrics, we can then calculate what is our profit before marketing, before our marketing cost, which is another huge variable expense. We don't know that, but we don't want to know that because that doesn't correlate into calculating this. So we're going to take 100 less 20 less 650 less 55. We're left with $72.95. Now that's going to be able to yield something called our profit margin before marketing. So what is that? That is our profit before marketing divided by our average sale price. And that is obviously that 72.95%. Now, in order to calculate the break-even ROAS, it's very simple. All we do is divide 1 divided by our profit margin percentage. So we have 1 divided by our profit margin percentage before marketing. And that's gonna give us 137. So that means when you come to your Etsy ads, if you see 137 in this column, that means that you're breaking even. And if it goes below 137, that means that you're not profitable on what the ad generated you. That doesn't mean that the whole listing wasn't profitable because you also have organic sales coming in. It just means based off the ad itself, it wasn't profitable for whatever period of time you set your ads to. Contrary to this, if you want to have a more specific view, because on a store level, this is showing you your store averages historically, but on a product level, if you want to get more specific, you're going to do the same calculation here. And the only difference is that you're going to use a specific sale price for that specific product instead of taking an average of all of your products. Same thing with your COGS, same thing with your Etsy seller fees, the payment processing fees. It's not an average. You're actually getting out what is your exact cost of goods sold for that exact sale price or that exact product. And the only difference here, which I just put it here, you get the same result, but there's actually 2 ways to calculate this. This one is 1 divided by your profit margin percentage. This one is actually your sale price divided by your profit before marketing. So that actually gets you the same result. It's just 2 different ways to look at it. So that is actually sale price. So again, you still get the same result here. Okay, so now the big question is, why does this matter? How do we use this actually when we're looking at our ads? Different people have different strategies when it comes to ad optimizations. But for me personally, when I know that my break-even ROAS is 2x, I know that anything under 2x is not profitable on an ad level. But that doesn't mean that I'm just automatically going to assume that this listing is dead and I'm going to turn it off. Before we do that is a couple of different things. The first thing that I want to do is I want to analyze on a bigger time view of what's been happening with this listing over a larger period of time. So I usually like to analyze within, a 2 to 3 month range to see what's been going on in the listing. So here we are, we're going back to September to November. And I'm going to first sort it by what's spending the most, because obviously that's what I care about, what's spending most of my money. And then I'm going to start going down here and seeing anything under 2x. So let's see if I can find anything under 2x. All right, so here's one that's really not performing at 0.53 for 2 months. Now, I personally know, looking at this, that the reason why this dropped so bad is because I kept this listing on when I was running out of stock of something. So I was basically spending money on a listing to a listing that had half of it sold out, which was my bad. So I wasted a lot of money on that. But let's pretend that wasn't the case, and those really just spent $91 with really bad return on ad spend. Does that mean then that I'm automatically just going to go ahead and turn this off? I personally don't. I go a step further and I investigate further. So on the ad level, it's saying that I'm not profitable. But let's go ahead and look into the detailed stats here in comparison to the lifetime of this listing. I know that this listing is less than a year old, but it's a pretty indexed listing. It's been around for about 6 months. So I'm gonna see what it spent in total this year. So this year, my total spend on it was actually $256. And we're clearly not profitable in comparison to what my ad revenue has been for this listing. Again, we're not turning it off just here because I want to see my spend in comparison to top line revenue, right? So how do I do that? We're going to go to listings and we're going to look up the title of that listing and we're going to compare it to all-time revenue. So actually when we compare what it spent compared to top line revenue, you see that it's actually at $702. When we calculate what our ROAS is at that level, we actually are over 2x ROAS. When you divide 702 divided by 256, we're actually at a 2.7 ROAS. This is where you decide. For me, I'm a little bit crazy and I'm actually willing to break even longer than most or not be super profitable just to gain a customer to then have the opportunity to hopefully get another review just to show Etsy that my store is making more sales. As long as it's not costing me any money, it's just costing time. So in that case scenario, I would actually leave this listing on. Now, obviously, I personally know that the reason that this was so bad was because I ran out of stock of something and I was running the ads something out of stock. But in the case that it wasn't, even in the case that it wasn't, I actually would still leave this on. But let's pull out the case scenario that this listing is actually only, let's say it's only a month old. And for whatever reason, Etsy decided to send it a bunch of traffic and it actually spent this $256 in only 1 month. And this $256 compared to top line sales was really only this $389. We're making this up. Let's just pretend in that use case scenario. So it's been a month old, it spent $256 and the lifetime revenue, top line revenue, not ad revenue, was $389. In that case, we're clearly not profitable. Etsy's favoring it for some reason, but it's spending my budget. So I want to pay attention to it because it's spending a lot really fast. At that point, we have to decide, do we want to turn it off? And the variable here is the age of the listing is really young. And we're not profitable, obviously. So in this case scenario, I would investigate even further. And again, the variable here is the age of the listing. How young is the listing? Etsy says that it can take up to 180 days to index a listing, but for whatever reason, they're favoring this listing and giving it a bunch of ad money. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna investigate further. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the listing and I'm gonna look for any clear signs of momentum that this listing actually might have potential. So I'm gonna open this window in an incognito window and I'm gonna view this listing in an incognito window and look for a clear sign of momentum. And the clear sign of momentum that I'm looking for is add to carts. So if this listing was less than a month old, but there was clear signs of momentum because it has 11 carts sitting in it and it's a new listing because under a month is considered new, I would probably actually keep this listing running for maybe another 2 weeks to see how that changes. Or especially if this said 20 add to carts, I would definitely not be turning it off, right? 11 add to carts is like middle tier. If it only had maybe 1, 2, or 3 add to carts, I would turn it off because it's spending so much of my budget. But because there is like a medium sign of momentum here, I probably would keep it on. And again, the exception here is because the listing is so young. Another variable here is, say you are a store that has thousands of listings, where it actually will spend high budget amounts because you have so many listings. In that case, I would recommend that you might not want to just break even because you have so many listings to dedicate more budget to. It may be better or more worth your while to put your money towards, you know, the hundreds of other listings that you have to test out. For this shop, because I only have a couple hundred listings, I'm okay with breaking even until my daily ad budget is actually getting up into, you know, closer to that $1,000 a day spend. Guys, I have a full training on my Etsy PPC strategy. That was just a little bit, but I really highly recommend that you cue the next video and watch a full training so I'm not missing any information, since this video was technically about what are ROAS. So make sure you cue that video next and check out that full training. Don't skip over anything if you are new to Etsy ads. I don't want to just get part of the information and then start blindly spending money, all right? So hopefully you guys got some serious value out of this video. My name is Hannah Gardner, and please subscribe to the channel if you thought you got some value. That means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.